Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Suter. I am the founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and really excited to bring a bunch of panelists to talk about the ethical uses of AI in the federal government. And then, many of you know, this has been a recurring theme when you're working on artificial intelligence. So we're going to have a really interesting discussion today. ATARC, of course, stands for the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. We are a nonprofit that facilitates collaboration between government, industry, and academia. I want to welcome all our attendees. A special thanks to Kendra Adams, Carly Glenn, and the entire Salesforce team. They've done a great job helping put us together. So this afternoon, we're going to hear from our panelists. We're going to have Q&A. We're going to pop in a few poll questions and then answer your questions. Before we begin, I want to encourage the audience to submit questions, of course, and also at the end, part of us giving out CP credits to our industry and government, especially our government colleagues that require these, is that you answer the poll questions. It's very important, and we will make sure you receive your CP credit. So if I can introduce all of our panelists real quick. Everybody wants to come on camera and turn your audio on. I'm going to do, first we got Colonel Teeter in progress. Keep safe, sir. But let me just go through everybody, and we'll just do some quick intros, and then we'll dive into it. Each of them will discuss their opinions on the topic, and you'll find out a little bit more about themselves. But we'll start off with Dr. Nelson Colon. He's a digital service expert at the Defense Digital Service at the new, relatively speaking, Office of the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office at the United States Department of Defense. Welcome, Nelson. We also have with us Tom Harrell. We've worked with a long time. He is IT specialist, senior IT policy analyst at the Information Technology Resources Branch at the National Center for Advancing Translation Services at NIH. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Good to see you. And another ATARC working group leader, Shakib Krabi, Chief Data Scientist, Office of the Chief Information Officer at the National Technical Information Service at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Good to see you again, Shakib. And we've got Colonel Mike Teeter, Chief Data Officer and Deputy Director, Digital Superiority, J6C4/Cyber Director, U.S. Space Command at the United States Department of Defense. Welcome. And we also, last but not least, we have Adilson Jardine, Vice President of Solution Engineering at Salesforce Public Sector. Welcome, Adilson. So
thank you, Tom.
Let's start. Yeah, great to have you. Let's start this off in the medical area with Tom. I look forward to your comments. I know that AI ethics is at the top of almost everything that you do there, and it has been for a long time. So ethics in general, but I look forward to your comments. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I mean, there's several things we have to look at. One, public good. Does the use of the data have clear benefits for the users, and does it serve the public good? Confidentiality and data security. The data subject's identity, whether it's a person or an organization, is protected, information is kept confidential and secure, and the issue of consent is considered appropriately. The methods and quality, the risks and limits of new technology are considered, and there's sufficient human oversight so that methods employed are consistent with recognized standards of integrity and quality. Legal compliance, public views and engagement, and transparency. These are all critical for us. And those are the tenets which we follow and adhere to in our data science community.
Great, thank you for that. Colonel Teeter, can we go next to you?
Yeah, so within U.S. Space Command and the Department of Defense, a lot of the ethical use of AI, again, is built around the trust of the AI, which will, of course, matter on having explainable models. understanding feature importance, and then running a lot of the tests on the models. And then, of course, the culture around AI to always make sure there's at least a human on the loop as we make decisions or employ at scale AI and machine learning models within Space Command. So appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to discussion.
Yep, thank you. And Keith, why don't we go with you next?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm very excited to be discussing the data ethics and AI ethics in this critical juncture. I would say by just starting is that we know that each federal agency in the US government is guided by its unique mission and the responsibility to operate effectively and efficiently and with integrity to achieve mission outcome. And at NTS, we take that very seriously. And we are actually have a unique authority that was given to us by Congress that allows us to enter in partnership with the nation's top private sector companies, academic institutions, and nonprofit to assist federal agency address national data-centric challenges and accelerate data-driven solution and AI-based capabilities, including how to deal with ethics, as we want to make sure that the solution that we develop provide actually the intended outcome that outcome is aligned with our values and our laws and the regulations, etc. So we can discuss more about like specific details that we have actually developed at the Department of Commerce to achieve that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll go with Dr. Colon. And Dr. Colon, I know there's been a big reorg. If you can give us a little bit of an update, I know it's in progress. I know AI ethics are front and center of the new reorganization, and we're talking about how the Joint AI Center and Ivana and the Chief Digital Office, your core, actually the Digital Defense Corps came together, but maybe you could tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so in terms of, I think we all share the same values when it comes to AI, right? Like we want to make sure that the things that we're building are fair, that are equitable, that are secure, that are, we're preserving the privacy of the people that we're serving. And I think we're focusing on that, but we're also thinking about this in terms of, from a security perspective, we like to think about it as, we know things are going to break. We know things are going to leak. We know things are going to, we're going to find flaws down the road. And so how do we prepare so that we can mitigate all of these things as soon as they happen? How do we detect the problems quickly and we attack them? So as a group, I think with this new, reorg, it's kind of nice because we're getting all of these people that are touching AI in different places now coming together to start thinking about these problems. How do we actually improve as a whole, as an organization on these things? And how do we develop better practices for making sure that we're building products that are not only more equitable and more secure, but that we are making sure that we have the systems in place to quickly detect and mitigate any risk.
Great, thank you for that. And Adilson, the major commercial company, you actually, when we initially started this, I was like, well, Salesforce, what do they have to do with ethical AI? Apparently, and a lot after I started talking to you. You guys have been in the front lines of this implementation. If you can give us a little bit of color, what you see across industry and definitely across government.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Again, pleasure being here today. I appreciate the opportunity here. So just a couple of quick thoughts as we talk about what the ethical implementations and implications are of AI. The first and foremost, from the Salesforce perspective, we actually created an ethical AI practice team that does research on ethical use, implementation, deployment, etc. I think there are significant observations that we've detailed from there. For example, we'll talk a little bit more about this, I hope, later on, but trust in AI. We suffer an interesting impedance mismatch in terms of the application of AI, whether it's in a technology delivery or research with AI. From our surveys, most people distrust AI. So that's one barrier, first and foremost, that we have to overcome, which is how do we engender better trust? That comes through, as everyone has mentioned so far, equitable use of it, fair use of it, but that has to be systemic too. It cannot be a one-off implementation of those principles there. So we found implementing, first and foremost, a practice and rules internally for how we do that, and evaluating these things through a maturity model. Where is an organization, whether it's one of our engineering organizations, one of our application organizations, or our customers, in my case, supporting all of our government and public sector customers, what is their maturity in implementing AI? In order to implement AI equitably, you need a lot of diversity in oversight. So it's not simply evaluating the technical implementation, but do you have legal support? Do you have contract support? Do you have diversity in the team that is defining the use cases? And then there's the data. We see a lot of data that has, in and of itself, gaps. If you want to train models effectively, you have to constantly reevaluate how you do that, how you trim the data, clean the data, improve the data as you're testing so that the outcomes are more representative of what real world use cases would look like. So eliminating the bias there, and then gaining customer feedback as well. So the users have to be able to trust that our models are successful and reliable as well. So lots of lessons learned there from this perspective from industry.
Great, thank you. So my first question is, what are the challenges you see around ethical AI and AI in general in government, maybe as it relates to trust and implementation? We'll start off with you, Tom.
The data. I mean, we can develop the algorithms and the models, but it's the data that concerns me, because we are getting data from so many different sources around the country and around the world. And some of the missingness of the data concerns me, and how we harmonize this data so that we can really run it through the models and get a really good result. So that's the big challenge that I see. As far as the technology, we have that. However, zero trust architecture is another big concern of mine as we go through this, because even after we perfect the models, we still have to worry about the outcomes and the security of those outcomes, because we have so many constituents that use it.
Is just a real quick follow-up. I know, like a USDA analogy, when they're doing surveys, there's like 10 different ways to say grains or something, they're saying there's different ways to say the same thing.
Yes, and so we have to harmonize the data, and we have a group that does that. Okay, to try to normalize it.
Right, but that's probably some manual there. You have to judge it, and there's people involved, I think.
Yes, there is, and even technology involved in that as well, as to how you're going to remedy the situation. Right. And so there's trust that we have to have in our scientists and our data scientists, and we have an incredible team, which makes life much easier for us.
Great. Next, we'll go with Colonel Teeter.
Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest challenges actually isn't necessarily the technology. I think the technology is there, but within Department of Defense and Space Command is the culture, and it's the culture. So as you're trying to build the trust, as you're trying to implement at scale, I think people are becoming more comfortable using some of the terms of it, but still the understanding of really what AI is, at least practical applications of it, as opposed to generalized AI. And so building that trust really comes through educating, training, but then also it's going to change the paradigm and the timelines associated with some of the more traditional, for example, reporting up chains. Of course, we have command channels, and you have your chain of command through. But when you have the ability, everybody within that, the lowest unit all the way up to the president, can see the same thing at the same time at scale, then it's really a cultural shift on both sides. One of understanding you're not going to have all the answers right away when you see something in the data, but then the other understanding that you don't necessarily get to message or massage or be subjective in it. And so I think that's really where the trust within the AI, within the models, within the data, understanding that piece is really the hardest part of implementation across space command.
Interesting. Thank you. Shakib?
Yes, let me talk a little bit as a technologist about artificial intelligence, about the AI, the elephant in the room here. So we're talking about responsible AI. I can just think about irresponsible AI and what nightmare it will be. Because AI is unquestionably the most powerful technology the world has ever known until now. So we can look at it at two ways. So it's a critical opportunity for federal agencies to actually deliver on mission efficiently and effectively, make evidence-based decisions, improve on customer experience, perform intelligent automation, enhance data privacy and system security, as well as validate our compliance with laws, regulation, and statute. So, but AI also, because it's so awesome, it also challenges our current and traditional guardrails, and it's moving fast. So AI is so powerful that it can amplify the benefits, but also the negative impact. So as any other technology, AI can fail, intentionally or unintentionally. So the reality is that most ethical problems that are linked to AI have been with us before. It's not like we started with clean sheet. So the way I see it is that it's a challenge, but also an opportunity to actually to leverage this awesome technology to tackle systems issues related to fairness and equity. And the answer involves a combination of policies and technical solutions. So for instance, if we think about facial recognition software, we saw it in the news. There are technical concerns, of course, related to the general efficacy and accuracy of facial recognition technology, but also among diverse population, but also some policy issues related to privacy that we have to tackle eventually at the government level, at the private sector level, at the nonprofit level, at the civil society level. And so the question is, how can we make sure that AI-based solutions are used as intended and in accordance with our laws, regulations, values? And number two, how can we leverage AI to promote and achieve equity and fairness? The way we handle it at Department of Commerce, and I think we show our leadership in that sense, is that we developed a data commerce strategy. And then we are in the process of actually implementing that strategy to an action plan. And our first effort actually deal with ethics, which is really commendable, because I don't know if you have seen, Tom, that meme that show a person saying, who's interested in AI? Everybody raised their hands. And then he said, who's interested in AI ethics? And everybody disappears. So actually we took that as a first objective. So we, out of our 5 strategic goals, we focus on ethics and to actually develop guidance, a framework to make sure that we actually ensure that our data practices are ethical and then in line with our mission. We are because the main problem, of course, is to bridge the gap between concept and action, between principles and practices. And that's what we try to do. So as was mentioned before, Coron-Tita mentioned data culture. Data ethics culture is first most in our list in providing those guidelines. So we are developing that, and we are in the process of actually finding a report to be able to share it eventually with the rest of the government and the public that specifically our guiding pillars, as well as best practices to be able to implement those in practice. And in your federal agency, in your bureau, and in your role. And that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Dr. Klon?
Yeah, I think possibly one of the biggest challenges that I've encountered working with AI in government, and I've worked with a couple of different agencies and different projects, and I think it's the fact that, and this is to our fault as AI scientists and machine learning experts and things like that, but we want to explain things, but it's very hard to communicate oftentimes what we're building to the general public. When we, for example, how do you explain to someone that, this is a good value for a log loss when we're evaluating a model? Or, how do you explain to someone a confusion matrix? And so the way that we evaluate performance, it's often very hard for people that are not in the field to understand, and that creates a lot of trust issues. And so it takes a lot more effort, because in a way we have to work harder to educate people. And so for me, that has been the most challenging thing. It's how do I, without using a metric that it's, because everyone understands averages, but that might just be misleading. And so how do I, without compromising the results, explain things to people in a way that is faithful to what's happening behind the scenes, and that it's faithful to the results? And so that's one of the things that I try to work a lot more, but it's definitely a challenge. It's communicating, building that trust through knowledge.
Right. Yeah, I got to speak at their language and speak it at the level they're at. That's tough for technology people sometimes. So great. Dilson?
Yeah, Tom. So trust, again, I think when we lose trust in anything as individuals, how do we regain that trust? I think one of the key ways is through transparency. And I think the way government can lead in this sense is to actually establish rules of explainability. And I think Dr. Klon was describing that well there. What does that mean when we have models that are explainable? What does it mean to score models so that the general public, including researchers and the public, can determine how models are being used, partly because government has such a huge role in the individual's life, right? Every government, from state and local through federal government agencies, have the ability to influence and impact people's day-to-day lives. So what does that mean? When we look at applications at the edge, meaning what our citizens and constituents are using, they're engaging with systems and they don't necessarily understand how that data will be used and how it influences and impacts them. So on the commercial side, we're seeing things like disclosure, terms of use of that data. If we capture that data, how can you as a citizen expect that data to be, right? What outcomes can you see happening? Internally, taking those principles that everyone's described and putting them into practice is really, really important here. Distilling those down to what does an AI developer or researcher need to consider in their data models, in their machine learning models? How will they apply those to real world use cases? Another great development that we've tracked and adopted ourselves here inside the Salesforce AI engines and capabilities, something called model cards. Model cards are part of a research outcome that actually describe and try and evaluate models while they're in development and while you're learning them. So that allows developers to reevaluate the model, and it will give them things like which data sets and data fields or elements could improve the model. Which ones do we think are missing? It could be race, it could be gender, it could be status, etc. How can you improve and refine the models consistently? So a number of different ways I think that we can engender more trust in the models and actually make that application more useful.
Yeah, I really like that. You know, we're starting to get that in security, right? When you're developing, you're starting to realize, okay, I'm going outside the guardrails here, I'm going out of the guardrails here while you're developing it. I think that kind of model for AI is a good one. That's a great point. I didn't really know that. We're going to hit some poll questions here. The first one is kind of a layup. So I think that we have people on this webinar, so I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but maybe we can talk about your, you know, inside your agency, maybe to you. I think everybody on this, we can say with ourselves, yes, we think it's very important. That's why you joined the webinar. But how is, you know, maybe we can skew the question to how important it is in your agency or maybe the agency you service. And let's submit that. Hope I got a corner. Very important. See, I didn't want to skew the results, having done polls before, but that's just a warm up. That means everybody's paying attention. Let's go to the next one. In your opinion, how important is AI in helping improve customer citizen services within the federal government? So, and I think we had a lot of this over, you know, I think Adilson was talking about how we interface with our federal government. I think pandemic, a lot of us interface with our federal government a lot more than maybe we had in the past. And I think we started realizing how important it is. So, okay, let's see what we have here. Okay, so now I'm going to a hard question. I'm going to just go 3 in a row today and shake things up. But this one's a little bit trickier. What is the most significant barrier to AI adoption that your agency is facing? We actually have my favorite, all the above and none of the above. That got me through college. So those kinds of multiple choice helped me out a little bit. All right, let's see what we have, and then we'll get some comments from folks. Okay, that was a little bit more spread out there a little bit. So let's start off with you, Tom. You know, as looking at these questions, you know, where would you rank some things, you know, in order of difficulty of some of the things that you have to worry about in your own agency?
I would say that it would be the procurement. As far as the effective use of the data, that we do very well. The skills we teach, we actually have training on site. The toolkits, we get whatever we need, and that's not an issue. The ethical use parameters, we have constant meetings on these kinds of issues. And if we are not sure, then we just go to aiethicist.org, and that tells you all the bad things that can happen. So the procurement is going to be the most difficult because we have to train acquisition as well.
Peter.
Yeah, so it's interesting, of course, where the first question was kind of the softball one, right? So it's very important to have fairness and equity in AI. The second question, it's a little bit of perspective on who the customer is, I guess, to have that, how important it is, which a lot of times for us, the customer would be someone within our system, not necessarily external. But the last one, I answered all of the above, but it's not quite true all of the above. As Tom was saying, I mean, I think we have some pockets of high capability, but we definitely, the data is stovepipe just by design, and so that piece, of course, becomes challenging. Procurement, absolutely. I think everybody in government could probably attest to that being an issue. And then the ethics, again, the Department of Defense actually has, and really through the CDAO's office now, they have the Responsible AI office. And so we've really been interacting with them, and then even internally within ours, looking at explainable AI. And so, as the gentleman was saying earlier, and just the importance of explainable AI helps with the adoption. And that's really, I think, what is the enabler to have you get after ethical applications.
Yeah, great. Tom, there was a question about that ethical AI site you were talking about. Do you mind dropping it in the chat? Can you do that? That'd be great.
Sure.
Get that out. You can work on that. I'll ask Dr. Cologne. I'll move the questioning over to you, Dr. Cologne. And I know you were just meeting with the AI ethicist, and I believe, right, today or yesterday or something?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Tomorrow, okay.
Yeah. So this is based entirely on my perception, but yeah, I think as both Colonel Teeter and it's not showing the names of my fellow panelists, I'm sorry, and Tom mentioned procurement. It's definitely one of the most difficult things for us as well. And even so that we are, as DDS, we are a team that's mainly developing technology, in-house, but there's often part of our job is actually recognizing that there is a solution somewhere and not, duplicating efforts. And so when something like that happens and we have to go to the procurement route, that's it would be a lot easier for everyone if we had mechanisms that allowed that to move a lot faster. And sometimes we end up developing in-house because precisely it's faster for us to do so. And so procurement is definitely the thing that's most difficult for us as well.
Yeah, that kind of comes up as a recurring theme in our webinars, no matter if it's AI, security, et cetera, et cetera. I know inside the CDO, they actually have an effort right now on educating procurement officers. I don't know if you've heard about that yet, procurement officers on AI. I think it's a great idea to kind of immerse them into artificial intelligence for a while. I think that's a good program. They should be doing that for cyber and some other disciplines. So but yeah, so we'll see how that goes. That's going to be released here very shortly. Shakib.
Well, it's interesting that Tom and Nelson mentioned procurement. Our deputy secretary came to visit us at NTIS, and he said, "You are the best kept secret in government." And I guess Nelson and Tom haven't heard about NTIS because we actually operate outside the FAR, so we can save you some headaches. Just reach out to us. And we've been working with several departments. Like Nelson mentioned, it's very important from our perspective at NTIS, since we work with several departments, of course, the Department of Commerce, but also the Department of Labor, Department of Homeland Security, USAID. We worked with Jake and the Department of Energy, etc., because it gives us a perspective about the common challenges and opportunities that the federal agency encounter. And like Adilson mentioned, the trust, and Tom mentioned the data quality and the data issues that are part of any federal agencies. And that's what we encounter. We actually encounter common problems and solutions. And it will be great if the federal government can actually, and we start doing it at the Commerce, implement some of those use cases, and so we can share our experiences as well as the tool that we've been developed, and then maybe save some money for the American people by reusing already developed models that address this basic most of the time the same challenges. The other part also, of course, is the data culture. So artificial intelligence is a transformative technology, so it's going to require some time to adjust the infrastructure, the architecture that we have in place, the siloed architecture, and as well as the way we solve problems, and then the way we have to start sharing data, sharing experiences, and learning more. I think the understanding of, like Nelson mentioned at some point, the understanding of AI technology and machine learning and the data and the importance of data and how bias can be included in the data, it just eats up in that trust issue ultimately that we're going to encounter and the risk that we're going to have. So the more aware we are, the more understanding we are, the more open and transparent and explainable models we use, the better will be in all our federal government.
Yeah, thank you, Chakib. And by the way, we're trying our best to get you not to be the best kept secret. All the,
thank you for that.
We're trying our best here. You do get in the press a lot, so you're doing your part, I think. Dilson, you want to answer that question? Then we have a question in the chat you can get to too if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Tom, thank you. And thank you to Randy Steer for posting this question on the chat here. So a couple of quick thoughts as I scan through the question there. No question that PIAs and the potential for PII creation development through AI is possible. One of the things that I noticed in there is you suggest that you've steered folks away from Salesforce. Salesforce is a platform with a number of different capabilities and technologies.
So Dilson, can you summarize? I'm not sure if everybody can see the question. Except
oh, so sure. Yeah, let me restate the question. Thanks, Tom. This is from Randy Steer, a particular ethical challenge for data relating to individuals. Privacy policies require review and disclosure, which is called a privacy information assessment. This is a standard procedure in the federal government of any collection of personally identifiable information, or PII. One of the trickiest sections of questions in that standardized review, the PIA, is about whether a system creates new personal information about an individual. Very valid concern. Does it make inferences about the characteristics that weren't directly collected, etc.? And Randy goes on to say that, and I think this is a very common concern for folks on the system side. You want to avoid typically answering yes to that question because it invites more scrutiny of the application, etc. I'll say setting the Salesforce comment aside for a second, part of the ethical use and responsible application of AI means we should be evaluating more accurately whether systems do create another PII or PIA implication. That should be a fundamental assumption of responsible AI implementations across systems. And then moving on to the Salesforce reference there, Salesforce as a platform has a number of different ways that you can choose to implement AI within the frameworks. So it doesn't just deploy out of the box. It doesn't automatically start creating data or making inferences. There are certain applications, and I'll give you a few examples of end user edge applications of AI. It could be natural language processing. It could be intelligent chatbots. Any number of ways that citizens or constituents engage with these technologies. Those don't necessarily infer we're going to create new data, but they are improving and enabling better interactions with those services. So, and without getting into narrow AI to broad AI, there are lots of different ways that AI gets implemented and can potentially be included in an application.
And we can have a discussion more offline if you need more color on that. We can definitely do that for the person who asked the question. Sure, happy to help them out there. We do have another question from the audience. Can the panelists describe the most effective technique in their organizations have used to address the cultural barriers and fear of change that often impact the rollout of AI solutions? It's acquisition and culture. You can pretty much put it in every webinar. Maybe we'll start off with you, Mike, Colonel Teeter.
Yeah, so what I found useful in trying to roll out AI again is just exposure to it. Public discourse quite a bit. We'll hear AI and everybody's seen the movies Terminator and
Colonel Teeter, we're going to put you on a break. You're in a bad spot.
pick your sci-fi, right? That has, okay. Can you hear me now? Oh.
Yeah, we hear you a little better. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry about that. Yeah.
You're on a good part there. You're on a roll with the Terminator and all that. So you heard some of that.
Yes. And so that's generally what you're dealing with when you're introducing people. So everybody has kind of a predisposed notion of what they think AI is now. And so I think a lot of times I find it useful also not even using the word AI, just explaining to them models or algorithms or in the background, and this is it. And so it's in how we communicate it. And Dr. Cologne had mentioned this too, right? Of being a technologist, you want to get in there and talk about, oh, feature, and I used Lime and my score was, and this is how I can know my model's not drifting, and but then you just lose everyone. So you have to use speaking
Peter, we're having a little problem with your audio. I would suggest it's okay if you just hang up and just use the dial-in. Let's maybe mute Peter. Yeah, okay. He's having a little problems with his audio. It's okay, we'll figure it out. Yeah, you know, that's probably not a great way to open up a conversation. Have you ever seen like the Terminator? Kind of like that, just, you know, for good purposes. AI. Oh yeah, we're talking about artificial intelligence. Tom?
Well, you know, it's interesting because we didn't encounter a cultural barrier simply because the reason the Congress created us 12 years ago was to get treatments to all people more quickly. And that's what we do. And the only way you can do that is with data. You want to cleanse that data, you want to analyze it, harmonize it, and get it from as many sources as possible, and have as many eyes upon it as possible so that we can effect a cure, or at least a therapeutic to make life easier. We've seen that with our Zika solution. We've seen it with our ability to even create skin, our ability to conduct our research on the space station and bring that data back and analyzing the impact of space on aging. So it's just part of us. I mean, we're sort of a unique, weird animal in the government because all of these things justify our existence, our ability to use them effectively and openly.
Do people still, not to challenge you a little bit, but you know, I have a server under my desk and now I need to go to the cloud. Do they, yeah, but I'm used to having the server under my desk, you know, like technology, are they
oh, those are our scientists. No. The scientists do that. If we don't get them to the cloud fast enough, they will have a server or a cloud in their pocket. Okay. And really it's because the reason we were created. We have to make a difference. We have to make it quickly. If you remember back to the oil spill in the Gulf, that dispersion was created by us. And so you do the needful when it's needed. The Moderna vaccine, we perfected that, okay, because it was needed. And that's what we're here for. And we have to use data and the algorithms and the models and the eyes and experience to create those therapeutics and treatments.
Yep. Dr. Cologne?
Yeah, I think this is something that my technique for approaching this kind of problem, I think it's something that the fear in AI, it's something that I've brought out at a previous panel. But this is a problem that I've encountered, you know, when I was at Microsoft building products, when I was doing consulting in the financial industry, and pretty much every government agency that I've worked with, I've encountered that same fear. I think the way that I usually approach it is that I sit down with people and I start asking at a basic level, you know, what are the parts of your job that you hate? What are the most repetitive parts of your job? Because those are the processes that I want to automate. I am not here to, you know, to displace you, you know, out of your job. I want to make your life easier. And so I want to build products around the stuff that you do on your day-to-day to help you move faster through your queue of whether it is, claims that you have to process, whether it is, revisions that you have to do, whether it is security alerts. I want to make sure that I built something to help you with your day-to-day work. So, and I think that usually helps people sort of, it eases their mind because it helps them understand that, oh, this technology is not here. I'm still needed. This technology is there to help me, not to displace me out of the job.
Yep. Steve?
I think the approach has to be from a top-down approach as well as a bottom-up approach. There has to be a combination of both. I think what we're doing at Commerce is actually commendable because we started with both components. So we have the first one is to actually change our mission. Our mission now has been changed. It says now that our mission is to create the condition for economic growth and opportunity for all communities. So it's very important that because mission is really federal agency live and breathe by their mission. So that's important. We developed a data strategy, and again, our first implementation of that data strategy is the data ethics framework that we're working on, and with other initiatives as well. But we also move in from the bottom up. That means, like all the panelists have said, it's very important to develop the data culture. So we are actually also working on that, on providing the resources to improve the data literacy, to improve the data science skills, to provide opportunities within the Department of Commerce, but also from outside, to bring in talent that have data science capabilities and skills. And if they don't have them, then you can actually have the opportunity to develop those skills within your own unit or within the department itself. So I think it's a very important that all those to come together and then have a better understanding of the importance of the data, the importance of the mission, and the importance of the data science skills that are very necessary for us to be competitive, because the Department of Commerce is about competitiveness as well, to be competitive, and because it's gonna, we are living in a global world, and we need to be ready for a lot of challenges across the world. So it's very important for our federal government to be very efficient, effective, and that's another way to motivate people to get involved in this awesome technology that is really is very transformative and provide a unique opportunity for the American people and the nation.
Thank you. Well put. Dilson.
A very interesting question. I had my head spinning here for a second, Tom, and I appreciate everyone's input there as well. I would also lean back a little bit and say, I think there's a perception that everyone's just going to start running with AI and creating machine learning models, and that's not going to happen that way. As evidenced, I think, by this esteemed panel, it takes a lot of training, education, capability to actually create these models and understand what we're doing with them. I think the difference then becomes, how are they applied and how easy are they to leverage internally? So if an organization has skepticism around AI, it's showing what are the types of use cases, what's the scope of AI that we're trying to address, what are we trying to implement or deploy, right? Is it understanding data, or is it engaging with users, etc.? There's a whole breadth on the spectrum of use cases where AI or machine learning will be applicable. And that does not mean that everyone suddenly becomes an AI expert or needs to become an AI developer. And I think going back to that transparency and the inclusiveness, one way I think that helps to overcome these cultural barriers are really the inclusivity of teams in both understanding and also evaluating the outcomes. So you don't have to be a developer to understand how to and go and write AI models, but it is helpful to be included in the process of determining what are the outcomes or best outcomes for particular models. So conducting scanning workshops and evaluation workshops that are broad and open and diverse helps to overcome those obstacles, I think.
Yeah, great. And Colonel Teeter, I think we got you by telephone. How are you? Well, we might not have him anymore. Oh, well. He was just on a roll too, like, so I'm from the 80s, I'm Gen X, and we were talking about, the Terminator, one of my favorite movies of all time, and there was going to be a great point there, and we unfortunately have to wait till the next webinar now. Anyway, yeah, so what are some of the success stories? We keep talking about all the challenges, and some of you have alluded to some of the success stories, but what's going on right now is changing within your organizations or with your customers in the case of Salesforce. Tom, I know you talked a little bit about some of the successes you've had, but it'd be good to hear. Actually, do we have Colonel Teeter back?
We do. Yeah, sorry about that.
Fantastic. So we've alluded to I'm a child of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s, like Stranger Things. That's like me. I'm like that same year. I'm class of 86 in high school. So when you're talking about the Terminator, you just got my attention, and then we lost you. So, for the culture change, and, you were talking about Terminator and AI, and I was like just ready for this point, and I think we all were. But if you can kind of recreate that magic a little bit about what you wanted to discuss. I'm glad we got you back.
Yeah, sorry about that. So, of course, being in the Department of Defense, right, so the Terminator is kind of what you have as a baseline for what most people, when they come in with their predisposed and they're thinking of AI and it's going to take over, and how can we let machines make decisions, right? So when what I find the best way to try to get it culturally adapted is just exposure. Getting them exposure to what it is and what it isn't, and where it takes, and that you're not using it. I mean, sure, it's very exquisite technology, but and I don't know who was saying it. One of the fellow panelists was saying it earlier, right? It's not like everybody's just running and freewheeling with machine learning models and AI. The language we are, right? A lot of people are becoming more sophisticated in their language they're using around it, but actual production level models and deployment of AI is relatively nascent compared to the conversation I hear around it. And so I think exposing people to it really helps to really show that, just because I say I'm implementing a machine learning model doesn't mean I'm building out Skynet or, the next Terminator. It means that I'm probably just doing something that's going to really be more machine assistant to the people. Because I heard another panelist also say about helping the people feel comfortable with, we're not replacing them with machines, but the machines are really just enabling them to do their work better and do the more interesting work that they were probably hired to do, as opposed to the rudimentary tasks that become very repetitive and probably monotonous. And I think that helps with the adoption.
Yeah, thank you for that. And if you don't want to use any references, please don't use Westworld. That's where the AI takes over the world. Let's not try to use that. That doesn't warm everybody up to the benefits of AI. Wow, we're running out of time quick. But the last question I have is around some positive. Since we've blown up the world a few times already with AI, with the Terminator, maybe we can have some good positive stories of using AI. And we'll fit, Tom, we've got you started with you. Why don't you go ahead and finish your thought?
Oh yeah, well, I think the biggest thing that we've done outside of just having success with the Moderna vaccine is the M3c Data Enclave, where we have really one of the most robust, in fact, the largest data enclave in the world on COVID comorbidity. And scientists around the world and researchers are gleaning a lot of good stuff out of that, especially the social determinants of health. Really a nice side effect, but hey, the data's there and people are using it, and it's incredible.
Yeah, so thank you for saving millions of lives. That's a pretty good use case. I like it. Dr. Cologne.
Yeah, DDS, we've had a couple of really interesting projects. There's one that, and actually, if anyone wants to check it out, we have a blog on our website where we post dds.mil, and we have a blog on our website where we post about some of our work. And I think one of my favorite ones that I was actually working before I joined DDS, and it's the reason why I fell in love with the work and came to DDS. I'm a former White House Presidential Innovation Fellow, but it was actually using for DNS protection, using AI to detect malicious or suspicious domains. And so how do we essentially look at DNS records and detect any suspicious domain that could be used for, phishing our employees, or, getting someone to like download the wrong thing. And that project was called Shepherd, and it was a really fun project. And to me, it was one of those things of, it's a great example of like the work that we do at DDS at the Department of Defense. It's combining security aspects with AI and building products around that.
Great. Yeah, so we'll get out some links from everybody in a package to all the attendees here, and we've got a couple good white papers that we've done at ATARC too. If my team will note it, we'll send something out to you with some of these links. Colonel Teeter?
Yeah, I would say some obviously useful pieces of models that we've implemented is a lot of correlations, and of course within space, and as the satellites or space objects are rotating around, there's thousands of objects up there, right? And we don't have control over most of them, right? They're just space debris, space junk. But we're really seeing some progress in using modeling to project out the physics of them, but then the perturbations caused by solar flares and a lot of the unpredictable or I'll say uncertain behaviors within space to get after and model that. So then if there is a space debris, of course we have a few people in our domain, we call it the space domain, like land and air and sea. Really on the ISS is the majority of them, right? But we want to keep them safe, and in doing that, propagating these models out it's pretty computationally expensive, similar to like weather models, and so we're seeing a lot of unique advances there that then give us a lot longer lead time to be able to maneuver objects out of the way, so to prevent a lot of those collisions. And so I'd say that would be a positive note for how we see AI being applied within the space domain.
That's a pretty good use case. I don't think that's getting any less complicated as time goes on and more we're using. So, all right. Keith.
Well, we have multiple success stories at NTIS. I can mention a couple. Our work with the USAID on the President Malaria Initiative. Malaria is a calamity that's been around for centuries, but but still in 2020 there were more than 600,000 malaria deaths worldwide, and 80% of those deaths were children under 5. So it's really heartbreaking to hear that. So the President Malaria Initiative actually goal is to control and eliminate malaria. So that's why it's a good example to show how AI and machine learning, no matter what the risks involved, actually can provide like very effective solution to literally save lives. So we help them actually build the MDive platform, which is the Malaria Data Integration and Visualization for Eradication platform, that help them basically gather all the information from around the world, basically in different languages, different formats, etc., and apply reporting tool and analytics to make them more efficient, and then to tackle the issue, because there's no vaccine yet. Just making decision about where to put the mosquito net, how to gather information about weather, migration patterns, human migration patterns, and so on and so forth. And help basically manage better the money that they have, more effectively to create the solutions and to help basically lower the malaria related death. Another one that we are very proud of is our work with Jake, which relates to security. So we have worked with Jake about how to leverage machine learning and artificial intelligence to improve cybersecurity defense, basically to tackle network penetrators, malicious actors. And we were able to show that like Nelson mentioned, automating some tasks through ML can actually provide some benefits there. And we were able to actually identify a malicious actor that has not been identified by human beings. So that shows how AI can be effectively used. Thanks.
That's great. As I said before, let's just get some links together. We'll send it out to everybody. I think this is fantastic. Dilson, you get to close the program. I know you have a lot of use cases. Maybe just touch on a couple of them that you guys have worked on. You all have worked on.
Sure. Yeah, and thank you again. So closing out here, because we're in the software delivery and application delivery space, we tend to create use cases that are generally applicable, right? So much more of broad applicability. Going to cast our minds back through the pandemic here. I think most folks will never really appreciate the amount of use cases that came forth due to the urgency during this pandemic. So things like unemployment. Unemployment systems across the US are handled state by state, different use cases, et cetera. What happened during the pandemic, I think we all recognize, lots of people were laid off, furloughed, et cetera. There was a huge amount of traffic towards unemployment insurance systems that were outdated, right? How do you deflect that traffic, assist people, automate the responses, get people to the information they need to apply and receive the benefits, et cetera? We saw huge scale implementations, very successful implementations of our capabilities in trying to deflect patterns like that, right? And recognizing patterns like that. But that extends through to the operators. How do you automate some tasks so that the operator on the other side receiving that case is able to respond more effectively? What's the next best action they can take to service that constituent, that caller more effectively? We saw a lot of these going from no implementation to getting in production very, very quickly, because those were the assists that state, local, and federal agencies needed. So everything from the end constituent through grievance management, disbursement decisions, et cetera, that were assisted through the use of AI models.
Well, thank you all for doing this. Thank you to all the participants, and thank you, Nelson, Tom, Shakib, Mike, and Adilson. This has been great. This has been a fun one. We're running a little over time, but not too bad. And one more final poll question to get your CPE credits. There you go. So if you do it, you get that kind of service. You're going to get it sent to you. And that's all the time we have for today. Here's what we have coming up. We have the Zero Trust Summit. This is going to be our biggest in-person event since pandemic. We've got about 250 people registered, about half government. Oh, Tom, we're going to see you next week. Fantastic. We've got John Kindervag, who's like the creator of Zero Trust. We're flying him at the last second. Should be a lot of fun. We got some good folks speaking, and hopefully we'll see a lot of you next week. But anyway, have a good weekend, and we'll see you at the next event. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Take care.